Today's lecture is going to deal with a monopoly market system. If you remember, we have 4 types of markets: pure competition, monopolistic competition, oligopoly, and monopoly. So right now we're going to the other extreme, and that would be a market where there is only one producer, and that producer is going to be producing a product that does not have many substitutes. There are going to be very strong barriers to entry. Actually, there is going to be no entry or exit. By definition, monopoly is only one company. Therefore, you could not have more than one. So no entry and no exit. And the type of advertising that a monopolist would do would be more of an image advertising, a feel-good type of advertising. To show that they are helping out the community, to show that they care about the individual consumers of their product. They're going to try and create a feeling of warmth that relates to the product that they are selling. The producer in a monopoly is a price maker. Actually, either monopoly or monopolistic competition or oligopoly, all of those are going to be price makers, which means that they have an impact on the price, more or less, depending on how imperfectly competitive the market is. And so, of course, monopoly is the most imperfectly competitive, and therefore the monopolist will have the most power. Now, what is going to limit the power of a monopolist? Generally speaking, it would be the demand curve for that product. So yes, the producer can choose a particular price that he or she would like to sell at, but the quantity or the number of units sold will be dictated by the demand for that particular product. So a monopolist can choose either a price or a quantity. Now, what is the goal of a monopolist? Just like in any other type of market, a monopolist is trying to maximize profits. That's actually the goal or the main theme of microeconomics. Now, where is that going to happen? And again, this is a common theme for all markets. It's going to be happening where marginal cost is going to be equal to marginal revenue. That quantity will be the one that will maximize the amount of profits that you can make. How are we going to calculate profits? Well, there are several ways. The most obvious would be to look at the difference between total cost and total revenue. Hopefully your total revenue is larger than your total cost. So as a vertical line, you'll be able to see the difference between the two, and that will be your total profits. Or you could look at average total cost and average revenue, and that will give you your average profit, which will then multiplied by quantity give you your total profit. So there are several ways of expressing profits, either using your totals or using your averages. So if you're looking at your totals, you will see that this is your total revenue, and it is going to be bending because the price changes and therefore total revenue changes. For perfect competition, it was a straight line, and your total cost is right here going down. So now, where is your profit? That vertical distance between your total revenue and your total cost at that particular quantity. So that would be one way of expressing it. Now, using the same numbers, we could also look at your average total cost, and this is your average revenue. So how many units are we going to produce? Where marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue, right here, 3 units. And how much are we going to charge? Go all the way up to $14. And how much are we, how much does it cost us to produce each one of the 3? Well, according to the average total cost. So right here, this $10 represents the cost of each one of the 3. And therefore, we're making $4 a piece, and we're selling 3 units, so 4 times 3 would be 12. And if we go back to right here, we would see the same thing, 42 and 30. 30 is your total cost, and 42 is your total revenue. So that is as a total. This distance between the 10 and the 4 was only the per unit, but if you multiply it by quantity, you will see that this rectangle also represents your total profits, economic profits of 12. If we are going to be calculating profits using the difference between marginal cost and marginal revenue, then by adding the marginal profit, we will be able to come up with the total profit, assuming, of course, that we also add our total fixed cost. So if unit number 5 costs you $10 and the revenue from unit number 5 is $15, then you are making $5 as the marginal profit. So you kind of put that into the profit bin, and then you look at the next unit. How much did you make on that particular unit? And so on and so forth. We could also look at your demand curve and your marginal revenue curve under a monopolist and calculate your economic profits. So if your average total cost curve is right here, then there is a loss all through, not a good point to be at. So in this situation, you have losses all through. If your average total cost drops below, then you see that you lose money here, but at any quantity short of 10, you are making economic profits. Okay, when we're looking at a demand curve, we will see that the demand for a monopolist is downward sloping. And as a result, the marginal revenue is going to fall below your demand curve or your average revenue curve. And the reason for that is because as you would like to sell more units, you will need to drop your price not only on the extra units that you would like to sell, but on all the units that you are going to be selling. So the marginal revenue is therefore going to be less than the price that you are selling the good for, because you will have gained the revenue from the extra units you're selling, but at the same time you will have had to put to reduce the price on the previously higher priced units. In order to explain that further, here we have your table for a monopoly, and you know it's a monopoly because your price is changing, your price is going down as you are trying to sell more units. And here you have your total revenue, which will be P times Q, and you have your marginal revenue, which will be the change in total revenue divided by change in quantity. And average revenue would be your total revenue divided by quantity, but average revenue and price are going to be one and the same. So we would like to show why marginal revenue is going to be lower than the price. So if we were to look at these, let's say we take quantity number 7 and quantity number 8. So when you want to sell 7 units, you're going to have to price them at $11 a piece. That will give you a total revenue of $77. Now if you wanted to sell 8 units, you'd have to drop your price to 10, but all 8 will be priced at 10. And therefore your total revenue is of $80. Now how do we calculate marginal revenue? We look at change in total revenue. Sometimes some texts will put your marginal between numbers, but it is okay to put it at the number. It's easier to view this as a table. So what we see here is that when we produced unit number 7, when we're selling unit number 7, then the total revenue increased by $5. Now, when we were selling the 7 units at 11, our revenue was $77, and at $8, we sold at 8 units, we sold at $10 a piece. So that was your $80 total revenue. We see that marginal revenue or the change between the total revenue between units 7 and 8 is only of 3 and not of 10. Why? Well, you see we have 7 units that were priced at 11. Now they are going to be priced at 10, so we are losing, so to speak, $7 from the sale on those items. And we also add the $8 that we have, I'm sorry, the $10, because that's the price. When you sell 8 units, you're going to be selling them at $10. So we get $10 for the 8th unit, but at the same time we lost $7 from the sale or the discount. Then this is a minus, this is a plus. The sum is going to be a plus 3, which is exactly that increase in total revenue. Another important relationship is a visual or a graphical relationship between average revenue, marginal revenue, and total revenue. We will see that if your marginal revenue is a positive number, so at any quantity short of 10 right here, then your total revenue is going up. When your marginal revenue is negative, so at quantities higher than 10, you see that total revenue is going down. So what happens when marginal revenue is 0? Well, you will have reached a maximum. And that's a very important relationship to remember. It applies to all marginals in relationship to their totals. So when you have a marginal that is positive, you know that total has to be going up. When your marginal is negative, total is going down. And what is happening to price as your total revenue here is increasing? Well, since quantity is going up, price must be going down. So you have a decrease in price and an increase in total revenue. Would that be an elastic or inelastic demand curve? Well, go back to the chapter and you will see that here it is going to be an elastic part of the demand curve. Now, as you continue past quantity 10, is price going up or is price going down? Since quantity is still going up, your price must still be coming down. But then all of a sudden, total revenue is going down. So when price goes down and total revenue goes down, this is an inelastic demand curve. So one more thing to remember, average revenue or demand and marginal revenue. Marginal revenue will show you at what point your demand is elastic, inelastic, or unit elastic. So here, if we go up vertically to your demand curve, since this part of your demand curve corresponds to this part of your marginal revenue, here your demand is elastic. Here you have a negative marginal revenue, so this way your demand is inelastic. And here is where your marginal revenue is 0, and at that point you have a unit elastic demand curve. As far as a graphical representation of economic profits for a monopoly, this is how you would express the information. These two represent your downward sloping demand curve, imperfect competition, downward sloping, and therefore you have both of those. And your average total and marginal cost curves are going to be the same as they were in previous market situations, because the costs are going to be kind of the same applied to all 4 types of market. So the big question is, how much are you going to be producing? Remember, we want to produce at the point where marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue, because this is where you are going to be maximizing your profits. So first thing, directly you look at marginal cost, marginal revenue. You see this is the quantity that will maximize my profits, let's say 5 units. So now how much am I going to charge? Well, in order to sell 5 units, you could charge according to the demand curve. And that demand curve, you will read your price right here. And let's say your price is $10 a piece. So at this point, are you making economic profits or not? And the answer is yes, you are. Because right here, you see this is your average revenue, and your average total cost is right here. Let's say 8 units. So this area right here represents your economic profits. So again, you look at marginal cost and marginal revenue to figure out the quantity that will maximize your profits. Go up to the demand, which is also your average revenue and price curve. Read off the price that you need to charge in order to sell 5 units. And then you compare the average revenue with the average total cost. And so per unit, you are making $2. But since you're selling $5, 2 times 5 will show you a total profit of $10. You could also break it down into the revenue, which would be P times Q, and that's this area right here, and your total cost. Probably won't show very well, but this is your total cost. Cost of $8 a unit and times 5 because you're producing 5 units. And this rectangle right here is going to represent your economic profits. Would you, in the long run, keep those economic profits? Well, in a monopoly you could, because you do not allow anybody to come in order to bid those away or to compete those profits away. So far what we have covered as your demand curve, it was an unregulated monopoly. But we also have a situation where our monopoly could be a natural monopoly, and therefore it will have to be regulated. A natural monopoly is one where you need to have only one company in order to be able to hit the lowest point on the average total cost curve, so as to reduce the costs of production. In order to be able to meet the lowest point, then if one company produced all of the output, we will be able to reach the lowest point on the average total cost curve. And this is what the government regulation is going to try and achieve. But if we only allow one company, then they will have so much power over price. So the big question is, how much should we allow them to charge? Are we going to allow them to make profits? Well, since most natural monopolies like PG&E used to be a natural monopoly, right now there is some sort of competition, the green power utilities, but it is still probably the most important provider of utility for the area. When we're looking at that, these are companies that are in the hands of private investors. So shareholders, in order to keep their money in the company, will need to receive a certain profit. The question is how large? Should the profit be economic or excess profits, or should it be just a regular normal profit? Well, the answer is we will only allow a normal profit because this is going to be a very safe investment. The shareholders are not going to be too concerned about the viability of the company. So as a result, we will allow them to charge only at a price that will cover all of the average total costs. So this is our monopoly, and these are the things you should remember. Number one, the characteristics: one producer, no entry or exit, a product that has very few substitutes, and advertising that is going to create goodwill around the producer and the product. We would like to maximize profits, like we would in any in any one of those types of markets. But here we have the most power. And in order to maximize profits, we will go marginal cost, marginal revenue. That will give us the quantity. We hit the demand curve to show us the price that we can charge, and the difference is going to be your economic profit. These are unregulated monopolies. If we would like to regulate a monopoly, then we will allow them to charge at average total cost so as to make just a normal profit rather than economic profit. Thank you.